And you're welcome to Literati on News Central, where powerful stories meet fearless minds. I'm your host, Judith Atibi. And every episode, we dive into books that do more than entertain. They challenge, they reveal, they heal. Here, the written word is a battleground and a balm, a space for reflection, resistance, and of course, transformation. And today, we sit with one of the most evocative literary voices of our time, Chigozie Obioma. He's an acclaimed author and twice Booker Prize finalist, whose latest novel, The Road to the Country, is already being hailed as a masterpiece, or in fact, it is indeed a masterpiece. The Road to the Country is a sweeping, mystical, and devastating journey into Nigeria's Biafra War, told through the eyes of Kunle, a young law student burdened with guilt over the accident that crippled his brother, Tunde. When war erupts, Kunle crosses into Biafra in search of redemption and is swept into the Biafran army. What unfolds is a visceral tale of brotherhood, survival, and destiny, shadowed by prophecy from a Yoruba seer who claims Kunle will die and return to life. Part war novel, part spiritual odyssey, The Road to the Country pulses with myth, memory, and the ache of a fractured nation. And my guest today is the author himself, Chigozie Obioma. He was born in Akure, Nigeria in the 1980s. He stunned the literary world with his debut novel, The Fisherman, and his second novel, An Orchestra of Minorities, both Booker Prize finalists. He's a professor of creative writing, a former Booker Prize judge, and the director of the Oxbelly Writers Retreat. His voice bridges African cosmology as well as with contemporary fiction, and his work continues to redefine how the world reads Nigeria. Chigozie, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Judith. It's
welcome
such a
to
pleasure
Literati.
to be here, yes.
We're honored to have you, by the way. Two-time Booker Prize finalist and judge sitting on that chair. Anyone who comes after you must top that.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, if you say that.
Well, congratulations, first of all, and well done on all the work. And I must say that you went into writing the Biafra War very unflinching. You were eyes wide open, just right in, you know. And I have to ask, why did you decide to write, you know, the war this way? Other authors or other documentation of the Biafran War, whether in fiction, has always been, you know, from the characters who are living in that time, right? But never really at the war front. Why from the war front?
Yeah, because, you know, I've always said that I do the dirty job of African literature. I try to cover gaps that nobody seems interested in doing. And I'm not saying that braggadociously, it's just happened twice now. Usually I discover that there are gaps. So if you look at African literature, in modern African literature, it's only about 50-something years old, you know, if you're counting from Amos Tutuola's The Palm Wine Drinker at 48, or Achebe's 52, you know, Things Fall Apart, and down to what we have now, okay, let's say about 60 years old or something like that. So there's a lot of gaps that hasn't been covered. And, you know, that was what I found out when I read John Milton's Paradise Lost and Dante's Inferno a couple years ago, and I was struck that these are books that are cosmological in nature, and they just take a cosmological idea and just detail it out. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to write one like that of the African, especially Nigerian cosmology. So I took the Igbo religion Ordinary, and the concept of the Chi is what I broadened out in An Orchestra of Minorities. And then here, I became interested in the Nigerian Biafra War that took place between 1967 to 1970, very early on in life. In fact, it was from 93, you know. I had gone to the east from Akure, where I grew up, for the first time.
Right.
And then I noticed after the all-night journey that many people who came to say hello to us amongst our relatives were deformed. One man had no limbs, one person with one arm and stuff like that. And I remember just asking my mom, like, why are these people like this? You know, I was an 8-year-old boy, a curious kid at the time. And she just answered me, Obaga, which means it was the war. And, you know, curiosity began to build from that early age. And so when, over time, I realized that I had covered grounds in reading and investigating what the war was all about, I was surprised to find that a preponderance of what has been written is actually nonfiction. Memoirs, first-hand accounts, journalistic pieces, gloating biographies by former soldiers,
generals, and heads,
and stuff like that. And in fiction, there was a paucity of fiction, first of all, but when you find the fiction, you find what I call wartime novels, which are books where the war is in the background. It just sets the piece, and then the characters are usually civilians. And then you almost never find a war novel which is set in the action, in the forefront, in the front lines. And I thought that, you know, we needed that. Number one, as a sort of a memorialization of the war, but also a sort of a fictional documentation of it. You know, not just of the time, but the events themselves. So what I've done is try to write All Quiet on the Western Front kind of novel for the Biafran War canon.
Right. As we're talking about, you know, your venture into cosmology and you wanting to do that, in this book, it really opens with, you know, a prophecy, a life that has already been mapped by fate. And we see the Yoruba seer. But in this one, we're finding both Yoruba and Igbo cosmology, which is now shaping the novel's nature and structure and just the very soul of this book. How were you able to manage both, being able to, you know, juggle both ends of it?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Akure as an Igbo boy, and so it was just only natural that, you know, if you're speaking the language, and language, as I say, is the vehicle of culture, I was getting attuned to the culture, the Yoruba culture, I mean, as well as the Igbo simultaneously. But what I found was that reading and seeing movies of the Yoruba canon, you know, whether it was soap, reading the early Fagunwa, for instance, all of these things shaped my aesthetics, even unconsciously. So when I sit down to write, there's usually an interplay of those belief systems and worldviews and religions. But here, you know, I always use Akure as a sort of a base. The fisherman was like that. And here, you know, the Igbala Oludamisi, who is the seer, is a sort of a Ifa practitioner. And also, I wanted to frame the novel in you know, in a sort of an original, I hope, structure where, you know, time is so like
It's warped.
Distorted, where, you know, the past is the present, and the present, in fact,
the present was the future.
The present,
or rather, the present was the past.
The present is the past, and the past is the future.
Because you're so
like
warped in this. I mean, this is the reason why you're a Booker Prize finalist. I would say, your depiction of trench warfare, like you rightfully said, you were sort of consciously or unconsciously trying to look at the texts that have appeared in the past, whether it's John Milton's own or All Quiet on the Western Front, books or novels like that. But the thing about depicting trench warfare and capturing the way you did, which is very raw, human, you know, and also deeply haunting as well, is that you have to be able to balance fiction with imagination, or rather facts with imagination. How were you able to do that?
Yeah, so it was so this is an uncharted territory for me, historical fiction, because I wanted to write about events that actually happened, and use very little of the imaginative, you know, space. So what I've done is, I've done a ridiculous amount of research. Sorry, I've done a ridiculous amount of research, which really meant that I practically read everything that was written about the war.
Right.
Went as far as going into the archives of the Red Cross, Doctors Without Border in Geneva, and, you know, into the photos and all of that. So what I had was obviously a trove of material. So I had to be selective because see, I want to show the reader what the war really was like.
I was reading an interview of yours that you were saying that the interviewer asked you, what was it about you trying to explore brotherhood, you know? And you said, oh, you weren't fixated on exploring brotherhood, that you were more about exploring relationships. And I find that very odd because it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Do you get me? Because at the core of the story is a brother who is trying to atone, you know, for something that he did in his childhood, right? And we also see that in The Fisherman as well, you know, is this brotherhood. I mean, it tells the story of this brotherhood, you know, and whether or not they were friends, whether they had friends in their neighborhood, they were all brothers, right? And so I want you to talk about, you know, this, your exploration of brotherhood. It may not be by blood, it could be by relationship, but we also see that at the war front as well. What is brotherhood to you in your exploration of it?
Yeah, so I think what I was trying to say to whoever that person is, thousands of them, is that I'm interested in relationships writ large, you see. Obviously, there are varieties of relationships. Relationship can go from the formal, I suppose we have a relationship of some kind now, to the very intimate, the romantic one. So within that variety, obviously, is a sibling relationship, which I've explored in The Fisherman to a certain degree, and also in The Road to the Country. But relationships really is the thing. You know, if you look at everything I've written, not just the novels, even the short stories, what you find is that I'm trying to have people connect. Whether it's a brother who loves his other brother so much that he can do anything for them, or, you know, a poultry farmer who falls in love with an upscale woman and is ruined by it, or a guy who wants to go and rescue his brother to sate his own conscience. These are connections. And then the next thing I try to do is to disconnect them through conflicts. So, and potentially reconnect people. So connection, disconnection, and potential reconnections. Often the reconnections don't happen, but which is where people want to fight.
Want to grab your head on the table, right?
Why do you do this? And so but that's related. So here, as in The Fisherman as well, is that pool of sibling bond is there. So Kunle and Tunde are close, they are fractured, and then Kunle really is on a journey of reconnection with his brother. If you're just tuning in, you're watching Literati here on News Central Television. My guest today is Chigozie Obioma, the brilliant two-time Booker finalist, and he's right here on the program today. We're discussing his book, The Road to the Country. After the break, we're going to get into what drives men into war, myths, quiet tragedies, and so much more. Stay with us.
Africa needs its own storytellers, people who understand the continent because they're from it. People who know that news is more than just a conversation starter, it's our stories. Because these stories run deeper than headlines and segments. It's about digging deeper to get the facts and telling the human side of every single story, not just the echoes from foreign headlines and perspectives. It's time to take back our narratives and share them in our voices. The birth of Africa's New Age reporting, and this is where it begins, right here at News Central TV, the stories that put Africa first.
You're welcome back to Literati on News Central. I am Judith Atibi. If you're just joining us, we're in conversation with Chigozie Obioma, two-time Booker Prize finalist, and we're exploring his extraordinary novel, The Road to the Country. Now, before the break, we're talking about Yoruba and Igbo cosmology, his intersection between fiction, contemporary fiction, of course, and cosmology, like he's been doing lately with this book. And most importantly, we're talking about brotherhood and relationship, and which is the title with the lead character of the book. See, my brain froze there for a second. Kunle. Kunle is of mixed heritage, by the way. He's Yoruba and Igbo. His father is Yoruba, his mother is Igbo, and he's caught in between identities, which I find chef's kiss. You know what I mean? And you're fond of doing that, by the way. Either they're of Igbo heritage and they're being raised in the South, sorry, in the West, or they're from the West and already they have roots in the South. And so I have to ask you, what does his duality reveal about tribal tensions, both then and now?
Yeah, so again, my makeup is that I am from Abia State, but I grew up in Akure, and I see it as a foundational place. I see myself as belonging there. And in that way, it's very hard for me to identify as just one thing, as just somebody who is an Igbo man, even though in many ways I am. So it is from that point that I obviously write these characters. So I wanted, first of all, to have, as I often do, so I believe that my novels are novels of enlightenment. So I always have a character who is in a particular space, and then I want them to evolve. I suppose all novels do that, but I am very, very, very interested in that evolution, psychological, emotional, and even spiritual.
But I do have to ask you, as someone who's written this book, I know it must have taken a long time in terms of writing and forming that. And what that happens is that it informs you of how ugly war can be. As a country that's still grappling with, tribal division itself, it makes me wonder, what do you hope that this book contributes in terms of national discourse on this ongoing tribal division that we continually grapple with every day?
Well, I'm very, so number one, I'm a novelist, a writer, so I want to tell stories, but I also, I'm very, very, I think at the heart of my work, if there's a thesis, is trying to make sense of Nigeria. Because Nigeria as a discourse it gives me particularly a sort of a headache, when I try to understand it. So
and you can imagine me having to do the job, always having to be here, on screen and trying to understand and simplify it for the viewers and talk to analysts.
It's just not easy. So what I try to do is to investigate fractions of Nigerian culture, even the fishermen, really. It is true that it's a metaphor for Nigeria. If you look at, how the country was formed, it's just like, these disparate nation states, the Hausa people, 60 to 70 million people, that's not a tribe. It's an insult to call them a tribe. It's the population of half of Europe, basically. About 15 countries is one tribe. It doesn't make sense. So these are, even the Igbo people, for instance, these are nation states subsumed under a bigger contraption. So and then somebody comes and tells them, this is what you should be called, this is who you should be. It's like the prophecy of the madman who comes in and interrupts the dynamic of that entity. And so orchestral minorities looks at a particular ethnic group here and their history through the lens of a tree who is 700 years old. And here I'm taking a seminal historical event that has shaped Nigeria, like if you, and detailing it, showing, I want to document what happened there, but also, as you're saying, like why it shouldn't happen again, number one, because of how devastating it is. You know, so all the battles here happened. They actually happened.
I need you to play a game for me.
Hey.
It's time for one of our literati tradition here.
Yeah.
It's called the Humor the Judith Game Show, but it's also the rapid fire segment. Is where I ask you questions, rapid fire questions, and you get to answer fast. You cannot think.
Okay.
The first thought, no overthinking.
Okay.
Can you do it?
Yes, sure.
Okay. The last book that kept you up all night.
The God of Small Things.
The God of Small Things. If you could have dinner with any fictional character, who would it be and what are you serving?
Satan in Paradise Lost.
What would you serve?
Very interesting.
Yeah, very interesting, I know.
I don't know, prayers. Against him.
Yeah, against him. Yeah, there you go. What's a word you overuse when writing your first draft?
Beautiful, I think. Which shouldn't be.
Which shouldn't be. It's like my face is like, I'm beautiful here. What's your guilty pleasure when writing gets tough?
Well, I play with my children. Yeah, so they know how to tease out the complex, to reduce it into the
I love
granular,
that.
you see.
I love that. What's a superstition or ritual you secretly believe when starting a new book?
I shouldn't tell people the plot before I write it down.
You're really an Igbo man. Pen, pencil, or laptop, what's your weapon of choice?
Pen.
The Nigerian dish you miss most when you are abroad?
I don't miss any because I make them. But see, yes, there's a soup called ofe achara.
And you miss that one?
I can't make it for the life of me.
Oh,
yes.
gosh. Describe your writing style in 3 words. Go.
Well, I let ideas gestate over a period of time, and then...
3 words.
Oh, in 3 words. Gestate, write down, and revise.
Describe your... if you weren't a writer or professor, what would you be doing?
Footballer.
Oh, I see that. Complete the sentence. A good story should always... should end which well. You used to give us happy endings.
Well, happy ending is not approximate to good
Please
ending.
don't know. Our definition of end well is happy ending. But I want to say thank you, Chigozie, for taking out the time to join us. I wish, again, 30 minutes is not enough time to talk to a Booker finalist like yourself. But, you know, before I let you go, as we wrap up this conversation, I must ask you about Kunle, right, and his journey and his story, and just this personal atonement, but most importantly, the horrors of war. A viewer watching this, as they're picking their book, what is one word you want them to take away from that book?
Redemption, because I feel like even as terrible as war is, it redeems people. It's a flattening effect. You know, in the war, you can't be an elitist. You cannot, there's no class. Everybody is fighting to survive.
Yeah.
So the rich man is trying to, if you're soldiers, that is, you're trying to dock the shrapnels as well as the poor guy. So that's why you see that people become selfless. So it redeems humanity, even though the context is very brutal.
Chigozie, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Judith. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Chigozie Obioma here is my author today. We've been discussing his dazzling book, The Road to the Country, 2-time Booker Prize finalist as well. And of course, this book has already been hailed as a masterpiece. Now, this has been Literati. Until I come your way next time, keep reading. I'm Judith Atibi. Bye for now.
News Central TV, with stories that put Africa first.